Hello, and welcome to Susu's Kindergarten Videos. Today we are going to talk about the emerald ash borer. And this is a beetle. And this beetle is not from the United States. It is actually from Asia, a whole world away. It is on the other side of the globe, and you can see here Asia. And this particular insect is from the country of China, Russia, this island of Japan, and also North and South Korea. And because we are a global society and we transport our products around the world, somehow this insect from Asia found its way into an airplane or a ship and probably got into the packaging. And it either traveled across the Pacific Ocean to get to the United States, or it traveled in the other direction and went across the Atlantic Ocean to the United States, which is on the other side of the globe. Now, it was discovered in Michigan, which is right here. And it was discovered in 2002. And we really didn't know, I guess at the time, how much devastation this insect was going to cause. But in the end, it has killed millions of ash species. And I'm going to just talk about the life cycle of this insect. You can see here the adult, and it is a beautiful, honestly, insect. It has a very shiny, metallic green color to its wings. This is a side view. You can see its legs, its eyes, its antennas here. And this is a top version of the insect. And you know it's a beetle because of this line that is down the center of its wings. And of course, this is an enlarged photograph of this insect. You could actually fit this insect inside of this penny here. And here you can see where the wings have been expanded to show underneath the body of the insect. And there are both male and female insects. And once they mate, the female will lay the eggs on the bark of the ash tree. And these are eggs that are enlarged. Of course, they're actually very tiny. And to me, they look like yellow raisins that are shriveled up. But once these eggs hatch, which takes about 2 weeks, they will bore down into the bark of the ash tree. And they start growing. And this is a larva that's underneath the bark of the ash tree. And this is where the xylem and phloem stay on the tree. And the xylem is the method that the tree soaks up water. And the phloem is how it gets its nutrients, its sugars, its food, to help the tree survive. So what happens is this larva has several growth stages, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it lives under this tree between 1 and 2 years. And it stays there getting bigger and growing and eating the food and the nutrients that the tree would normally get. And it creates these tunnels that disrupts this flow of food and water to the tree. And then after no more than 2 years, the larva will pupate, and it will then emerge from underneath the bark and be an adult. And this is called complete metamorphosis, because you go from a larva to this. So it's completely different and pretty amazing if you really think about this whole process. And many insects follow this same pattern. You have the adult that grows and develops, then it mates, and then the female will lay the eggs, and then you have the larva, which grows and develops and then pupates and turns into the insect. So this insect has really devastated the ash trees that are native to the United States. And I want to share with you some examples that we have in our yard where this insect has destroyed our ash trees. So we'll go outside and I'll show you some examples. Here we are in a part of the yard that we have 3 ash trees growing together, and these are white ash. There are multiple species of ash trees that grow throughout the eastern half of the United States, and the green and the white ash are the most prolific on the eastern half of the United States. They grow in many of our states, and they have lots of trees that do grow there, but there are also black ash and blue ash that are being affected by the emerald ash borer. Now you can tell what an ash looks like even in the winter, which we are in the winter, just by looking at the bark. And the ash trees have a texture, a specific texture that you can recognize. It has a light to medium gray color on the bark, but it also forms these triangles in the barks on the outside, and here's the top and the bottom and the 2 sides. And you have to use your imagination just a little bit, but if you stand back and look, you can see some triangles forming within the bark. And this is where the emerald ash adult female will come and lay her eggs down in the furrowed, fissured part of the bark. And then in about 2 weeks, the eggs will hatch. And then they tunnel down in through this bark, and they get between the actual tree and the bark where the xylem and phloem are that we talked about, and then they start tunneling. And here you can see an example of an ash tree that where the bark is coming off of the tree, and this actually has occurred because the woodpeckers are trying to get at the larva, the actual borer of the emerald ash, to eat it. It's food for them. And you can see where they have flecked, and that's what it's called, flecking. It flecks the bark off of the tree to get down to the insects. And you can see this lighter color where the bark has come off. So unfortunately, these trees are already dead because they've been so infestated with the emerald ash borer, and these are going to have to be cut down. So this is an extreme version of an infestation, but it can be more subtle. This does take time. Between 2 and 5 years is really about how long it takes to kill an ash tree, which really is not that long. But in the springtime, another indication that you might have emerald ash borer is you might have branches that have no leaves. So you start getting dieback in the top of the tree is one strong indication that you do have the borer within the tree. So let's go to another part of the yard, and I'll show you underneath the bark where the larvae actually tunnel. Here we are in another part of the yard where we've actually taken down some of the ash trees that have succumbed to the emerald ash borer. And this is already cut down and cut up. And I thought it would be a good place to show you the tunneling that the larvae actually do. You can see here the tunneling that the borer creates underneath the bark. See, here's the bark on this section of this log. And you can even see the tunneling on the bark. They go back and forth. They have kind of an S pattern. And of course, this does destroy the xylem and the phloem, which does provide the tree with food and sugar and water. Anything that's living can really not survive without water and food. So this is what has caused this tree to die. And here is another example of this tunneling that's created from the larvae. Now, once the larvae grow up and get large enough, which does take between 1 and 2 years, the adult will emerge from the tree. And this is another way you can tell if you have emerald ash borer, is if you look right here, this is where a emerald ash adult has emerged from the bark. And if you look, it looks like a D that's kind of laying on its side. You've got this straight edge, and then you have this circle on the bottom. And this occurs over and over throughout the tree. Here's another one that looks just like a D. There, and if you look at from this direction, it's oriented correctly. But you have a straight edge and a round edge. And I'm not exactly sure why that happens in that fashion, but it does. And the edges are very clearly marked, which I think is very fascinating. And this can happen, early on in the destruction of the tree. You can notice these D-shaped exit points where the adults are emerging from underneath the bark where they have pupated. So that's another interesting detail about the emerald ash borer. Now, some of these holes are round, and that is not where the adults have emerged. That is really where the woodpeckers have been pecking to get the larvae to eat. And the woodpeckers, they do help us control the population. Even though, the tree is probably already destroyed, it does keep the numbers of the adults down because they are eating the larvae, which is a good thing. And, we hope that the trees are not completely lost. We are going to lose millions of ash trees due to the emerald ash borer. And while that's devastating because we do use ash wood for many products, you may know that bats are made from the ash wood to use in baseball. Lots of sporting equipment, skis, things like that are made from ash wood. And furniture, and also wood to make tools the handles on tools are used from ash. So it's a very important tree for us here in the United States. And we really hope that some trees will show some resilience against this insect. There are some that are surviving because they may have some genetic something in their genes that have made them more resistant to this insect. And also, you know, there are insects that are beginning to eat the emerald ash borer to keep down those numbers, which is good. So it's while it's very interesting and devastating to watch this happen, it also shows you the delicate system that we live in this world. Everything's interconnected, and when you introduce something like the emerald ash borer into a new environment that doesn't have an enemy that can keep its numbers under control, you can see what happens. So it's very interesting to see how this has developed and evolved over time. And, you know, we really hope that some of the trees are strong enough to survive. And hopefully we can, once the insect is gone and they don't have any more ash trees to eat and survive on, then hopefully their populations will go down and we can replant our ash trees from hopefully the few that may survive, and we'll be able to once again have ash to enjoy because they are beautiful. They have a great fall yellow color on their leaves, and they really create shade for your yard. So just wanted to share this very interesting insect with you and how it has come into our country and taking hold of our ash species. So when you're outside, I hope that you can look around, and if you see any of the indications that I've talked about, then you may know that you have ash trees in your yard that could possibly be being taken over, or you may find one that has survived, which would be very interesting to report to those that are keeping track of this insect. Over and out from Susu's Garden. Love you.